Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome to the patio on this chilly autumn evening. Tonight on the channel we're going to be talking with our old friend Jammy Dodger one more time because she just can't leave the kids alone. And it's kind of weird. Really quick though, like the video. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe to the channel so we can all work together to bring feminism back into the real world because gosh do we need it. And people like Jamie definitely need it. I'm not going to be responding to the entire, 45-minute video because Jamie repeats herself a lot. That tends to happen when you're trying to control the narrative, and soothe yourself. It's a lot of self-soothing goes on. Now, the bits that I have included are just packed with the usual gems of, why trans kids are so damn important. And we're going to be conflating sex and gender a whole lot. Let's go.
Hey Spuds, it's Jamie, welcome back to another video. First video on the channel, I don't know, but welcome either way. Today we're doing something very interesting. Somebody has written an article, somebody has taken the time to not only read my book, or read parts of my book at least, but they have written an article that has included my book. I feel so very honored.
You can tell she's excited. I mean, I guess you can't blame her, but that smirk, am I right?
What I wanted to do today was read this article together and have a chat about it. Because if you didn't know, I have written a book called The T in LGBT. Everything you need to know about being trans.
It's interesting how the cover has blue and pink letters. That's a loaded color combination.
It's not a nice article. I don't know if that was already obvious. It's not the most pleasant thing, and I debated whether or not bringing attention to it because it was on a news site that is behind a paywall. I have free access through my phone, through Apple, for the next couple months, which is how I could read it. I did not pay for it.
So Jamie wrote a book, and then somebody wrote a poor review of the book. But she wants to make sure that we're aware that she did not pay to read the poor review of her book.
And it didn't really do anything or go anywhere. But I was like, no, do you know what? I want to talk about it because people get the opportunity and get the platforms like this to write stuff that is complete lies.
And here's the first example of projection we'll have this evening. Having a platform to tell lies.
And doesn't make sense. And so why can't I call that out and then also promote my book at the same time?
That's an amazing rationalization to take on somebody with whom I'm pretty sure you hold a grudge. But we'll get there.
I thought we could have a little read and see exactly what somebody had to say about my book. What parents should do when their child says, I'm transgender. I mean, is there really a debate?
There is a debate, unfortunately, over whether or not a kid can be secretly the opposite sex inside. Because that is what we're talking about, right?
Just to preface this, I'm not going to be including the name. So this article basically puts my book up against an opposing view. What is an opposing view? As if it's a debate. They kind of talk about a book that is very not like mine, and then my book. I'm not going to name the other book because I don't want to give it publicity, and I'm also not going to name the person who wrote this article because I don't want to give them publicity.
Is it just me, or is this underhanded? If the person who wrote this article went to the trouble to buy and read your book and name you, it doesn't matter, because you don't do a very good job of hiding who it is that you're arguing against. And as we shall see, it's somebody else that we've talked about before on the channel.
See, I've had a quick look at their Twitter though, and yeah, definitely running in some gender critical echo chamber circles, whatever you want to call it. There's definitely some opinions like that going on, it seems.
They're not going to tell us who it is, but we're just supposed to take your word for it that they're a bad person. Sounds solid.
Anyway, what parents should do when their child says, I'm transgender. These two guides for gender distressed children and their parents highlight the polarity of the transgender debate, the one that shouldn't exist in the first place.
For once we agree, that debate should not exist. No child is secretly born in the wrong body. That's not a thing.
The T in LGBT+ by Jamie Rains and something could not be more different. I like how instantly there's already a miscommunication about my book by saying that it's a guide for gender distressed children and their parents. The other one, right from the title, is quite clearly about trans kids. My one is not. I'm not saying that younger people can't read it, but it's definitely aimed more towards a slightly older audience who are trans or not trans, and it is disingenuous, and I feel like potentially deliberate attempt at being this is what a trans person is telling kids to do.
And this is where we start already conflating kids, with children, with young people. Like children goes all the way down, right? Infants are children. 16-year-olds are not. But they are count as young people. They might even count as kids. We're already playing linguistic games.
That's what it feels like. Could be a mistake, could be a misinterpretation of what my book is about. Who knows?
And we're projecting again. Who is deliberately misinterpreting whom here?
Before I wrote this review, I looked up both titles on Amazon. Jamie Rains, a 29-year-old trans man who makes YouTube videos aimed at young trans people, had a near clean sweep of 5-star ratings. I'm very pleased that people like my book. But again, the who makes YouTube videos aimed at young trans people. I make YouTube videos aimed at people wanting to learn more about trans people or learn more about being trans if that's how they are feeling, or just to feel less alone as a trans person. They are not aimed at young trans people.
We're going to take on the charge that any of this is aimed at kids of any sort. Let's look at the background, shall we? It is pink, which is about as non-threatening as you could get. There's a shelf full of toys, and I see a picture of an ice cream cone. It looks like the set of a fucking kids show. Shall we see that opening again?
Hey, it's Buds, it's Jamie, welcome back to another video. First video on the channel, I don't know, but welcome either way.
I don't know, Jamie. There's a fine line between being kid accessible and kid friendly, and I think those toys in the background may have crossed it.
And actually, a majority of my audience are between 18 to 34 years old. Nearly the smallest chunk are under 18s. So, again, no, disingenuous.
Who's being disingenuous here? Trying to say that you're not aiming any of this at kids. But why in the hell would Jamie Rains want to target kids, Sarah? That is an excellent question. Why indeed?
But equally, there'd be nothing wrong if I had written a guide for trans kids and their parents, or if I made videos aimed at young trans people, because there is nothing wrong with young trans people being told that they are allowed to be trans and it's okay for them to be trans.
Disagree entirely. It is very wrong to tell a kid that they were born in the wrong body. That is one of the most immoral and unethical things I have ever heard.
But it's just not the truth about my book and my content. It is accessible to younger trans people, but I haven't written a guide for trans kids. I don't make videos aimed at young trans people specifically.
The background is pink and full of stuffed animals. What are we to make of this? If somebody just happened by this, they might think this was a kids show until you started talking.
And I feel like that language is all designed to feed into this narrative of like, we must protect the kids. Look at these trans people.
They're targeting our children.
They are. And you're going to explain to us here in just a minute why.
That's the kind of energy this has in it. I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but
I don't know if it's deliberate on their part, but I think I understand why you're getting that.
Meanwhile, the other book had been deluged with negative reviews, calling it dangerous and bigoted. Very strange, since the book hadn't even been published at the time. Even stranger if you've read the book, which is compassionate and measured and urges parents to accept their children's decision to transition if that's what they eventually choose.
You're skipping right past the point that she's making, which is that those reviews are clearly biased in your favor.
Sounds very much like the whole kind of temporary reparative thing of like, let's wait. You're not allowed to do anything until you're a very specific age. And even that it's very like, they say that's what they're like, but are they really?
Yeah, you're right. Wisdom is such bullshit.
I do also want to say that I've checked recently as well, and the last time I checked, one of the authors of this other book is the vice president of the Institute for Comprehensive Gender Dysphoria Research, which basically just peddles rapid onset gender dysphoria. So
here we go. Here's the axe you're grinding, right? The Institute for Comprehensive Gender Dysphoria Research is run by Lisa Littman, who is the one who published the study 5 years ago about rapid onset gender dysphoria in the first fucking place that we covered a few weeks ago, Jamie and I. So, you've been angry about this for a while, haven't you, Jamie? Stella O'Malley, who we're talking about, is the vice president, and Lisa Littman is the president. I think that might be part of the reason that this caught your eye, wasn't it? They were comparing your book to their book, which makes it just a little bit suspicious that you left off the names of the people who you're arguing against here, doesn't it? Just another way that you hide your own ulterior motives.
There's somebody who very much believes and buys into the myth of rapid onset gender dysphoria because it is a myth, it's not a real thing.
Say it again. Say it again. It won't make it true, but you can say it again.
Has written a book on how to approach trans children. Someone who thinks it's a social contagion has written a book or co-authored a book.
Ideas can be dangerous. Ideas can hurt you. Ideas can cause you to hurt yourself or other people.
Compassionate, measured. This is the fraught, angry world of trans activism. I love it. Trans people stand up for themselves. Ugh, how dare they?
Trans people do not exist.
Where, in my experience, any questioning viewpoint must be crushed. I like how, and I'm not saying this is what's happening, but what I've seen is like people just be like outright, point blank transphobic and be like, being trans isn't valid, it's not a real thing. Then they've been called transphobic and they've gone, oh, how dare you? All I did was question something.
No. What happens is someone states a fact and then gets dogpiled. That's what happens. You are just strawmanning the shit out of that.
And it's like, no, that's not what it is. Like, your viewpoint was not questioning. Your viewpoint was bigoted and deserved to be called out for that.
Making an observation of fact is not bigotry.
And it's very much just like victimizing of like,
I've done nothing wrong.
when really like transphobia is a horrible thing. It really affects people negatively. It affects trans people, and trans people don't deserve that.
Yeah, you're right. Being told you're wrong about something is upsetting. Truth hurts, but it shall set you free.
Rains represents the affirmative camp. It shouldn't be a camp. The affirmative approach is the accepted approach by like all major medical boards.
Invocations of authority will get you nowhere around here, madam.
It is the approach that leads to better well-being, reduced gender dysphoria. It is the approach.
Say it again, it won't make it true. Being told the things you want to hear make you happier. Temporarily. It proves nothing.
It is not like a camp. The other approach is like, if you don't believe in the affirmative approach, what do you believe in? Because the other option is conversion therapy.
No, the other option is nature. Frankly, myself, me personally. Okay, if I had not been given the time to figure this shit out, I never would have. And my life would not be my life now. Okay, my kids would not exist.
The idea that when a child says they are not their birth sex, they should be automatically believed and supported. Trans girls are girls, trans boys are boys, and non-binary children are non-binary, whatever that means in practice. I mean, in practice, that just means them expressing themselves, how they feel comfortable, and what is the big deal with that? We trust cis kids to know themselves, but we don't trust trans kids, and I think that there's a very big double standard there. And so yes, I am very much in the camp of saying that we should not be forcing anybody to wear clothes or express themselves or go by pronouns or a name that makes them feel deeply uncomfortable and miserable.
Like you're strawmanning again, that's not what that said. What that said is that you automatically have to agree that a boy is a girl or a girl is a boy or whatever. Which is not forcing people into boxes. No, you don't even debate the points here. It's disappointing, huh?
There's not a problem with just being like, hey, yeah, cool, I accept how you're feeling, let's roll with it. It doesn't cause any harm.
It doesn't cause any harm by saying, yeah, you're right, there is something terribly wrong with you.
Being in an unaccepting environment does cause harm, though.
Being in an unaccepting environment can make you really unhappy. It depends on what they're unaccepting of. If they're unaccepting of normal teenage urges, then yeah, that's pretty miserable abuse. If they're unaccepting of your delusion, there's this thing called tough love. It's sort of a pity nobody gave you any.
The three authors of the book are mental health professionals who have collaborated to write the book. Take a different approach, of course they do. We don't believe there is such a thing as a trans child. They don't believe there's such a thing as a trans child, and this is called a compassionate and measured book.
Here we go. And this is the key difference that we're not arguing over here. You want to assume that trans kids exist. And these people are not willing to give you that. Accept this one ridiculous claim, then you can accept all of these others. And they are just refusing to accept this foundational claim because it is untrue. Because it's absurd. But like, are we talking about sex or gender here? Okay, because Male and female are not genders.
I don't really understand how you can then think that there are trans adults if you don't think there are trans children.
There it is. Thank you. If trans kids don't exist, trans adults don't either.
Because being trans is something you are born. It's not something that develops or suddenly happens to you. You are born trans. Therefore, there are trans children because there are trans adults.
No. No one is born in the wrong body. No one is in the wrong body. That's not how this works. Like, what is it that's in the wrong body? Some sort of mysterious masculine essence that you have there, Jamie? What are we talking about? You certainly didn't define that in this video.
I was a trans child. I just didn't know it. I was trans when I was a child. I was not aware of the label.
You didn't know that because that wasn't a thing back then.
They don't believe that there is such a thing as a trans child.
That's right, because there's not.
For them, gender distress is a real phenomenon, but a complex one. Nobody said it was simple.
Yeah, if you think you might be trans, then you are. How many times have we heard that?
All that's being said is like, let's trust trans people more than closed-minded cis people.
You want to talk about being closed-minded? Okay, that automatic agreement. If your daughter comes to you and says they're actually your son, you have to support that. Or you're a closed-minded bigot.
And let's trust trans kids as much as we trust cis kids in knowing who they are.
You mean not at all? If a 5-year-old comes up to you and tells you that they're a dog, are you expected to automatically accept that? No, of course not. That kid is not a trans dog. Somehow this label only applies if that kid comes up to you and tells you he's a girl. Why is that?
Through which a child might be expressing any number of needs related to their inner life or their relationship to their family. Are they trying to say that gender distress is caused? I just reacted to the Ken Zucker documentary, Transgender Kids Who Knows Best, and this just sounds like that. They're just like harping on about an approach that literally got somebody fired and a clinic closed down because it is not an appropriate approach to treating trans kids or trans adults or anybody who's trans.
No true trans person would believe any of that stuff, right, Jamie?
And they're literally here saying something very similar. This would not be a controversial approach to take in any other area of child development. It should be obvious to anyone who has been a teenager that, as somebody wrote, adolescents are on a roller coaster journey of self-exploration, angst, and change. Something you are certain of at 14 or 16 may have little relationship to the person you are at 21 or 30. So put everybody on puberty blockers then. There is a very low regret rate of transitioning. The true desistance rates are very, very, very low. They're not the reported 80%. They were highly overinflated numbers from poor research. They're actually, the couple of percents.
But there shouldn't be any. There shouldn't be any desisters. If this is a real phenomenon that's so vital to who you are, that you will know it at 16 as well as you know it at 30. My goodness, what else can you say that about?
I think what you're saying is what this approach would be saying, we should just force everybody to go through the puberty that their body just automatically goes through. And then when they're like 30 or something and they're still having these transy feelings, then whatever, they're an adult, they can do what they want.
Pretty much. That's just sort of how life works.
But what we're not realizing is that you're gonna force way more trans kids to go through something incredibly distressing that's gonna have a lifelong impact on them and cause a negative impact on their life.
Yeah, that's called puberty. Puberty fucking sucks for everybody. You are not that special.
And cause them to have more surgery.
More surgery? They don't need any surgery at all.
Then you would be risking people regretting. And what the regret would be for is going on puberty blockers.
You say puberty blockers as if that's no big deal. You don't get to just pause time. And if you never go through puberty, then your brain never matures completely. We have no idea what that's going to look like going forward, regardless of what your exterior sex characteristics fucking look like.
But honestly, when people say, we can't trust that kids are trans because when they're 14 or 16, they might not really know what they want in life and that might change by the time they're 21 or 30. I like how broad a range 21 to 30 is. I'm not even 30 yet. Jesus, would they have wanted me to have not started yet?
You were just saying earlier about how none of this is aimed at young people because most of your viewers are 18 to 35. Why is that not too big a chunk of the population to matter, Jamie?
I don't understand how that can be said without understanding there is a major flaw in that if you are having that energy with trans kids not going through something irreversible until they're 21 or 30, then why not cis kids?
No, we are, because all kids are cis kids. There's no such thing as trans kids. This is a mirage you're talking about. That you need to exist to justify your own identity. That is very obvious here, right?
Let's just stop all puberty because no child is old enough to know their gender until they're 30.
The puberty is the thing that allows you to mature into an adult who can know these kinds of things about themselves. So no, you should just go ahead and leave well enough alone.
Yet when you apply this banal observation to the issue of gender, you will immediately be cast as a malignant transphobe in some quarters. The way of twisting this to be like, oh, I'm just trying to point out the obvious, I'm just trying to be logical, woe me for now being called a bigot. That's not what's happening though, is it? If you are sat there saying that you don't trust a child in knowing their gender simply because they are trans,
no one is expected to take a kid's word for all the grand sweeping proclamations they make about anything, because they don't know enough about anything to make grand sweeping proclamations of any kind.
and you think that they should therefore be forced to live as their assigned birth sex until they are a fully grown adult?
Yes. Forced to live as your birth sex. You mean as yourself. Yes. Nature did that.
That is close-minded of you. That is being transphobic. That is attempting some form of reparative therapy on that child.
A lot of times transition is gay erasure. So don't even. Secondly, transphobia is such a childish accusation. You're impugning my identity? Why do you hate me? I don't hate you. And I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of something that doesn't exist.
By forcing them to live and be somebody they are not, and in a way that is incredibly uncomfortable for them and causes them a lot of misery.
Unfortunately, welcome to the world. Most of us are forced to exist in a way that doesn't agree with who we are on the inside, and it's terrifically uncomfortable and detrimental to our mental health. Maybe we should talk about that in a more general manner as opposed to, the thing that serves your ego.
If you actually listened to trans people and trans kids and families who are accepting and have seen the difference in their child when they gained acceptance and all of this stuff, I really think less people would have this opinion.
If you actually listened to the accepting families. Again, we're not going to be asking the delusional people about their delusions, because that's not a way to get a straight answer about anything.
But they don't actually speak to trans people.
Again, being told what you want to hear makes you really happy, and does. It doesn't prove anything.
The authors of this other book know this, and their aim in this book is to offer an alternative toolkit for parents of gender-distressed children where most of the available resources push families towards transition. I don't appreciate this language of push children to transition. It's like, oh, you're slightly gender non-conforming. Okay, we need to rush you down to the gender clinic and you will walk out with testosterone this very day even though you are only 6 years old. That doesn't happen. In the UK, the youngest you can start hormones is 16. The youngest you can have any surgery is 18 related to being trans, and I believe you need parental consent if you're starting hormones below 18 as well.
And we're just going to sweep aside all those numbers and all those regulations because we're not even going to need to talk about any of that. Pushing a child towards transition is assuming that trans is a thing. Okay? Assuming that a kid who tells you they're secretly the opposite sex inside is telling you the gospel truth. Assuming that trans kids exist is pushing for transition, because that's not a thing.
So available resources don't push families towards transition. Available resources state that the gender affirmative approach is the accepted approach.
The gender affirmative approach assumes transness, which is the problem.
The research tells us that people in more accepting environments have better well-being, and lower acceptance leads to lower well-being, and therefore there is no issue with accepting. There is a very high persistence rate in trans kids.
Yeah, I can't imagine why there would be such a high persistence rate when you pretty much just explained to us that their sense of their own well-being is reliant upon it. Does that sound familiar?
And all that's involved for kids in terms of transitioning anyway is social things, and then maybe puberty blockers when they are at an age to start puberty, so like anywhere from 11 to 14-ish.
9. Puberty blockers start at Tanner stage 2, which is age 9 for a lot of kids.
So really what this book must be stating is do not accept your child being gender non-conforming and wanting to go by a name and pronouns and live in a way that makes them comfortable.
What they're saying, if anything, is that you should not accept the idea that your child is secretly the opposite sex inside. Being gender non-conforming has got nothing to do with it. Sex or gender, Jamie, which one are we talking about?
No, you must force them to be uncomfortable and align with their assigned birth sex and live that way.
See, gender non-conformity does not equate to sexual transition. We're playing word games again because we used sex and gender as sort of synonyms for such a very long time that now we have forgotten that they are two different things. Letting a little boy wear a dress is just not the same thing as telling him he's actually a girl. One of those two things is kind and tolerant, and the other is cruel and a lie.
That's what it's saying, because all that, pushing families towards transition is doing is saying, like, your kid is trans, they're expressing that this is how they want to be referred to and this is what they want to wear. There is no harm in accepting that and just giving them an open and loving environment to explore who they are.
That's true. It has nothing to do with the sex of the child.
Rains' book shows what such parents are up against. As if it's a weapon. It's a book.
A pen is mightier than the sword, right? It's just a book. It's not aimed at kids. It's only got pink and blue letters on the cover. Either way, it invokes early developmental phases, doesn't it? It's like symbolic, you're kind of throwing the symbolism out there and then being like, I didn't actually mean it that way. But you had to know that some of the stuff was going to hit people that way. You're sitting in front of a picture of an ice cream cone, Jamie. It's like a universal symbol for childhood.
It's a book to help trans people and to help people understand trans people more and to help allies. It's not a weapon. It's chatty, accessible, and utterly glib about what transition entails. Glib means insincere and shallow. Yes, it's chatty and accessible. That was the aim of it, to feel accessible as a book around a topic that is often difficult to talk about and to talk with other people and to accept about oneself. So yes, I did want to make it accessible and friendly. That was not for any malicious intention other than to help trans people and to help allies.
Help them agree with you. Being friendly can have malicious intent. Yeah, it can if you're selling a lie. And we're just going to kind of cut it off there because Jamie starts repeating herself over and over again. No, my book that has pink and blue letters on the cover is totally not for or about kids. My show with the pink background and the fucking stuffed animals in the corner is not for or about kids. Why are we talking about them anyway? Why does this connection keep being made? Why did you decide to address this? Since it was so obscure, it's behind a paywall, and you didn't even feel it necessary to name the people that you're arguing against. So why address it at all? Like I say, I think you have an axe to grind here. I think that this, for whatever reason, has rattled you a little bit. Okay? The idea of rapid onset gender dysphoria really seems to scare you, and I hypothesize that that is because it puts a chink in your armor, right? The armor between you and the reality that you're not a man, honey. That is okay. I'm not a man either. But you need there to be trans kids, because without trans kids, there are no trans adults. That is your angle here. My angle is that I don't want people messing with my kids' normal, natural development. It doesn't threaten my identity, because my identity is... I've been through all this already. You should really try it. The truth hurts, but it will set you free. I have been Rad Mom out here on the patio on a chilly autumn evening. Thank you so much for joining me. Please like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel so we can all work together to bring feminism back into the real world. because people like Jamie desperately need it. And join us at the top of the hour for the live stream and discussion, where we can debate the difference between sex and gender, and if ever the twain shall meet. Mwah. I'll see you later. Bye.